Joining us today is Bill from Knightscope. Bill, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, good to be here.
Let's kind of start off I'm really fascinated with the origins of company names. What gave you the idea to name it Knightscope and to start off?
Let's see. So we have this slightly ambitious goal to make the United States of America the safest country in the world. So we wanted something bright, positive. So there's the portion of knight, knights in shining armor, and then scope. So we wanted to be able to see and provide our million law enforcement professionals and million security guards really smart eyes and ears for them to do their jobs more effectively. So put the two together, Knightscope, and there you go. You got knightscope.com.
So my logic was basically a knight with flawless vision.
I'll take it.
My take is that security and law enforcement are two very big issues in this country right now. And you are kind of at the forefront of both. How long did it ultimately take you guys to build your first security robot?
When we started the company back in 2013, no one wanted to do this. Hey, Bill, you're out of your mind. This will never work. It's hardware and software, physical security and law enforcement, not an investment thesis. You need to go away. So it took us 364 days to raise the seed round. So that was problematic. So you could probably say, a year, two.
I would trust that the initial investor meetings probably didn't go according to plan. What were kind of some of the things that they said, I'm not interested because?
There's hardware involved. It's autonomous. It's a space that no one really understands. You're going to need billions of dollars to get this off the ground.
Yep.
It'll never work. You need to be focused. This is one of the most silly things I heard was it's hardware and software, too complicated. You should pick one. Not keeping in mind that we're trying to solve a problem and the problem doesn't care if it's hardware or software.
Of course.
So it was rather frustrating, but now it's more than interesting and laughable because we're now backed by over 10,000 investors in 4 major corporations.
As entrepreneurs, you always remember the first guy or the first person to ultimately invest. Who was that for you guys?
The former chairman and CEO was Splunk.
Ooh.
Godfrey Sullivan. He has a big soft spot for law enforcement, and he wrote us our first check, and we're forever grateful. But there's a lot of folks. We've got patriots, we've got chief security officers of major corporations, NYPD detectives, FBI, DHS, CIA, bankers, lawyers, HR people. We've got all kinds of folks from all walks of life have been supporting our efforts.
So looking out, into the future, do you think the private sector is going to be a bigger opportunity or the public?
So I think it's ill-advised for young companies to do business to government sales as their initial go-to-market. So we intentionally have been focused on business to business. But recently we landed our first few law enforcement agencies, our first couple of municipalities, and we just announced our first federal government contract. I think over the long term, we'll probably end up being split between the two, but the problems are the same. Like the criminals and terrorists don't care if you're public or private. It's basically a kind of a artificial delineation.
Well, I was going to say, since COVID, a lot of things have changed fundamentally. How do you think security has changed, after the community outbreak in late February, and especially what we're going through now? I would assume that the less human interaction that you probably have, the better, until this pandemic essentially, goes away or we take care of it. So how has your mindset changed since most of the country has either been in soft quarantine or just kind of keeping a low profile?
I'm on 146 days without a haircut, Chris. I can't believe this is like on TV. But basically, I shut down. I put us on lockdown ahead of the state and the county and the city on March 8th. So our clients are essential services, so hospitals, law enforcement agencies, security teams. So we've continued to operate without missing a beat, having these machines operate across the country 24/7. Yes, you're right. The world has changed, but in a very odd way for us. Not to be funny about it, but robots are immune, and people are starting to realize that remote monitoring is going to become the norm. And now, on top of that, the entire nation is focused on reimagining public safety. And it's what we've been saying for the last 7 years. We need some new tools and new technologies and new processes to better secure our country.
Probably in the early innings of something, that is going to be drastically different than what we've experienced over the last half century. And I also kind of wanted to allude to the fact that being bald, at least during the pandemic, does have its benefits, because this is probably the only haircut that I've known since I was 20. So, Bill, where are you right now? Can
Where
you
am I
disclose that?
physically? I am at Knightscope headquarters in Mountain View, California, in the heart of Silicon Valley.
My next question is, do you think your lease is going to get cheaper or more expensive in the next 5 years?
the I'm presuming you mean the real estate and not necessarily the subscriptions for the machines.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, real estate is gonna go down significantly, and it's gonna take, I think, 2, 3, 4 quarters of really bad earnings results, and people realizing that this is not going to go away, and it's going to have a significant and material and lasting impact.
Do you personally think that there is a correlation between a bad economy and crime?
Yes. So basically, as we've got 45 million people file for unemployment. When you're out of a job and you're out of food, regardless if you're a good person or not, stuff gets really stressful and bad things start happening. So yes, I think there is a correlation.
I know we spoke about this off camera, but I think it's a very important point. You were telling me about the shortage that this country has in terms of security and law enforcement already. And you gave me a couple numbers that were honestly quite horrifying in terms of how many people, the U.S. consists of in terms of overall population, and how many people are ultimately protecting that population. Would you be so kind to kind of tell our audience what you told me?
Sure, I'll give. This is a very important point. So there are a million law enforcement professionals in the U.S. and a million security guards. So that's 2 million people, right? But they have to run 24/7, and you can't triple shift a human. So at any given time, there's only 500,000 humans trying to secure 328 million Americans across 50 states.
Wow.
That math doesn't work. And that's why you have $1 trillion negative economic impact of crime on the US every single year. It is a hidden tax we all pay in blood, tears, and treasure. And so what's the problem and what's the opportunity here? So if you look at the Department of Defense, most people don't know this. So, they have a $700 billion budget. There's one person in charge, the Secretary of Defense, and they give the troops, the 2+ million troops, every level of capability and technology you might ever imagine to go into a theater of war. And there's a Lockheed Martin, a Boeing, a Raytheon, a General Dynamics.
Right.
Build you you need a new tank, you need a new jet fighter, you need a new submarine, whatever it is. It'll be a little expensive, but you'll get it, right? What most people don't realize, and one of the big flaws in the country that I love, is the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security have no federal jurisdiction over 19,000 law enforcement agencies and 8,000 private security firms. There's literally no one in charge. There's no risk capital. There's no innovation process. There's no equivalent of a General Dynamics or Northrop to build you whatever you need. And so what I have a problem with is 2 million people get up every morning on our own soil, willing to take a bullet for you and your family, and the level of technology that we provide to them as a country is beneath the dignity of this nation. And that is why we've been working so hard at Knightscope for the last 7 years to go build some tools so they actually have some capabilities to do their jobs much more safely and effectively.
I concur 100%. I feel that a lot of these guys don't have the adequate tools to ultimately do their job properly. The next question is from an investor who saw you with Mr. Wonderful. How did that relation come about? Did you call him or did he call you?
He was very kind. He's actually an advisor to our broker dealer, and we just had the opportunity to chat. He's a big believer not only in entrepreneurs, but he knows, and I know, that the way companies are financed is frankly broken. I was a little worried, to be honest, Chris. I'm like, uh-oh, what's he going to ask me now? But
well, no.
It went well.
Bill, what I was going to ask you is he even tougher on entrepreneurs when the camera is not rolling, or he's pretty much the same? There's no deviation.
With me, he was cordial on and off, supportive on and off, and maybe a little bit more frank off camera.
How much of your robot is actually assembled and manufactured right here in the States?
So this is one of the frustrating things as an entrepreneur when we were able pre-COVID to bring investors through here. So we actually design everything, as everyone was like, who designed all this stuff? And who did you contract engineer to do all this stuff? No, we designed it. We did all the engineering for the software, the firmware, the hardware. Where in China did you get these built? And I just want to go through the roof.
Yeah.
So we physically build them here with our team, designed and built in Silicon Valley, made in the USA. There's a strategic important point there that a lot of investors miss out. Like, oh, well, we should just outsource it to somewhere in China. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to make a poignant example just to make the point. Do you really think we're going to put a Shenzhen Chinese-made surveillance robot at the Pentagon? Have you thought through the whole thing? No. Then, okay, let's move on.
I always say that you can only control what you can control. I've been trying to buy as many made in American products as I possibly can. Yes, it's more expensive. Yes, it's harder to find, but my take is that if you don't start from the bottom up, you're not going to have an economy 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road. I just kind of want to switch gears for a second. You can't rent one of these, can you? So if I have, once hopefully COVID goes away and I'm hosting a big party or say a conference, I can't come to you and basically say, hey, Bill, can you loan me one of your devices for 6 to 8 hours?
No. So we offer this as a machine as a service business model. It's a subscription. It's all inclusive. It's the hardware, the software, the docking station, the freight, the setup, the maintenance service, support, the telecom, everything's included on an effective price of $4 to $11 an hour. So we sign year-long contracts running 24/7. So each machine generates about 70 grand to about 100 grand of revenue. And today with no efficiencies, it costs me about 60 grand to build one. So the idea is to recover the cost of the machine in the first calendar year. Second, third, fourth, fifth year, you're just printing money. And so if you net out all the operating expenses and everything else, each machine should generate on the order of about $250,000 of profit over that 5-year period.
What is the strangest thing one of your robots has ever encountered?
Back 2013 to 2015, we were worried as to like, what happens when we put one out in the field, in the real world with real humans in a real world environment? Are people going to freak out, or, is society going to allow us to do this? And after we saw, families driving hours to come take pictures with the robots, so many robot selfies. And the one that got me was girls just hugging the machine and then planting a big kiss on the machine with red lipstick. We have machines running around with lipstick. I'm like, okay, I think we're going to be okay.
My child also adores the robot when she goes down to the local mall. So it's interesting. I almost kind of feel that there's a different age dynamic where if you're older, you're like, what's this? And when you're younger, it's like, oh my God, this is so wonderful. Let me go and get next to it.
Hollywood did a disservice and service for us over the last 3 decades. People think that robots can do all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah. And majority of it's fiction, but you still have that little bit in there. But in the end of the day, Chris, I think what ends up happening is it brings out the kid in all of us, actually, regardless of age.
Finally, my last question is, because you and I are both entrepreneurs and we get put in the ringer every single day. What's that one tip that you would give, every entrepreneur right now that is struggling with everything that is going on, where they're kind of on first base and they really don't know what's next? What's that insight that you could share with them?
Don't ever let anyone tell you no. You decide what you're going to go do, and you're going to go force it to happen. And you're going to get punched in the face all the way through. You're going to get body slammed, and you pick yourself back up, you get back in the ring. When we started this company, everyone told us this would never work. Yeah, well, now we've operated autonomously all across the country. We're backed by 10,000 investors. We've got the technology built. We've got crime fighting wins. We've helped the law enforcement agency issue an arrest warrant, stop a sexual predator. We've got all kinds of stuff. But all these people, all these naysayers told you no. And the trick is you take that, and that's your fuel. The more you tell us no, that you can't do this, the more that you're gonna drive to make sure you can make it happen. So don't ever let anyone tell you no. Just push forward.
Bill, thank you so much for being on the lowdown today. It's an honor and privilege to have you, what you've built, and your energy. I think you're ultimately solving one of the biggest problems society will have in the coming years. So everyone at LD wishes you the very best moving forward, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
Good to see you, Chris. Appreciate the support, and be safe out there.
Thanks, brother. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care.